Recording in progress.
No, thank you.
Okay, we'll begin with the pledge of allegiance for this evening's district meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we have our agenda presented. Any comments, corrections?
I've actually got an addition to the consent agenda under letter A, new hires. You could add the name Christian. Christian, Wingle for middle school ELA.
A recent hire, I guess.
Yep, about 8 hours ago. I'm being facetious, formally Friday, but after the agenda came out.
Any questions, comments?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, passes. So we'll go right into public comments.
We have any
Oh,
delegation?
Oh, yep,
could
delegation.
we do? Okay. So the approval of the agenda.
Yeah, I would think we approved the consent agenda.
Okay, so skip 2. All right.
I'm
It's all right.
delegations, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you. I just want to take a moment, members of the board, to introduce 2 folks, Megan Damon, Kelly Osler, 2 of our community members. You're going to hear from them or ask questions of them later, but these were our 2 longest tenured members of our facilities task force that weren't either employees or other folks directly linked to the school district. So I just wanted to introduce them as well so that you would, if you have questions later of either of them, that's not the first time that you meet them. So thank you for coming tonight. And that's all.
Okay. Okay, then we'll move on to the proposed consent agenda as amended. Any questions or comments? That insurance bill, is that a once a year?
Yes, once a year.
It made a big jump
It has gone up.
quite a ways. I noticed that was. Made me look.
And that's across the state too, not just us.
Okay. At least it's once a year.
Yes. just once a year.
Every 6 months. Or
Agreed.
any questions, comments?
I take it we finished off the year in okay spot, since we didn't have an emergency meeting.
We're still waiting. Yep, we're waiting for our reports from the county. They got new software and so they're waiting to send reports. They're kind of transferring everything right now, so.
Good.
But I think everything that we know of should look good, so.
I think it's safe to say that we definitely never hit that tipping point of major purchases or emergency purchases.
Okay, well, the chair would entertain a motion on approval.
I'll move to approve the proposed consent agenda.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Now we can move into public comment.
I have a question. I don't know. So you guys were talking about how the insurance went up and in the list it says school supplies as part of that. Does that mean that the parents will not have to supply as many supplies for the classes?
Sorry, Neil.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. So these items that are in parentheses, the board gets a list of vouchers that the district is paying for. And these are just subcategories, kind of generic terms of what those vouchers each paid for. So in this case, it was for some supplies. Those could be student supplies, they might be teacher supplies, could be a number of items. To my knowledge, the kindergarten had all of their school supplies provided this year. But the supply list that went out to parents on the website and again during open house would still be the recommended ones. And of course, if anybody had any trouble with any of that purchase, we have funds to make available to be able to assist them.
I know that I had parents that came to me that weren't aware of those funds.
Mhm.
So I know that the community outreach and that the city will provide school supplies for certain families.
If you know of anybody, all they have to do is get a hold of the building principal, or they can talk to me directly and I can tell them where to go.
Thank you.
Can we get your name just for the record? I know Pete just gave it to us, but
Thank you, Dave.
thank you.
Any other public comments? I guess I do have one, don't I?
No.
No, okay.
That's the suggestions from the suggestion box.
Okay. I thought that was a public comment.
Nope. And there was no electronic.
No electronic comments, okay. Well, then we'll move on to principal reports. Ms. Hanson, coming up first.
Hello. I know tonight we were kind of supposed to talk about community outreach, and it's been a good time to do that. We started in August with our Taste of Kindergarten, and I talked about that a little bit last time, but we had almost 80 families come through. And so 2 different days, there was about a 3-hour period of time where kindergarten students came in and they kind of rotated through classrooms, and then Lisa and I met with parents, and it was a great moment just to answer questions and talk about our philosophy and what to expect kind of with the beginning of kindergarten and things like that. So that was a great start. We got to talk about our front parking lot a little bit. That seems to have helped some frustration that parents go, that place can be frustrating. And then we had Meet Your Teacher Night, which was the Monday before school started. And also, I don't have a number of how many came through exactly, but it was full, and brought supplies and met teachers and met our new staff, our counselor and Lisa, and it was really great. We had Mid-Columbia Library there with a table. We have a set of parents now that's starting up a PTO. So we had, I think, 20 people sign up on the list that they're interested in helping with that. So we really are feeling like we're making some momentum looking forward out of shut down. So that's great. Just this past weekend at Benton City Days, we had a float in the parade, and that was, I will never doubt Miss Lisa Upton again. When she went on Thursday, she said, we can have a float. And I was like, it's in 2 days. And she said, we can do it. And we did. And it was really fun. We had the bear there and rode on a flatbed truck and had teachers and kids marching, and it was just really great to see how excited kids get to see their teachers like somewhere else, you know. They just can't believe they're not standing in the school. So that was great. And then at the pageant, the Little Miss Benton City pageant, I was also asked to speak between kind of the dance and when the girls were getting ready for something else. And that was also a great opportunity to meet. We introduced new staff and got to talk a little bit about our philosophy of hope, the School of Hope, where every kid, every day, no exceptions. And, you know, just talked about our open door policy now and making sure we're getting people back in. And so that was a great opportunity. And then we worked in the booth and on the wheel. Thanks, Clay, for bringing the wheel. It was very popular. Got to answer a lot of questions that way too. So, and then I just wanted to talk about some upcoming events we're thinking about in doing. So we're planning for our math and science night sometime in October, and we'll nail that down soon so that we can have enough notice on that for people. We want to add some sort of event to our November conferences, like an art walk or something that goes along with that. Participating now, apparently we do floats in all the parades, so the winter parade. We are now doing the winter parade, so that is already in the planning stages. I know the PTO is talking about more family events like bingo night or, you know, things like that. So I haven't heard dates on those, but again, they're just kind of in the up and running state, getting up and running. So, and then we'll have a reading night in the spring. And so lots of good community outreach that we're doing. And I feel like it's really beneficial right now. So any questions?
My 3-year-old asked if I was a real bear on the float, so maybe I can ask you and I can pass that on.
Definitely.
That's what I said.
I know, it was the kids loved the bear so much. And I have to say, person in the bear suit. Yeah, was a little one. When we came out of that, it was.
He or she will not be.
No, right, it'll be better, it was great. All right, well, thank you.
Mr. Fett.
Good evening. It is, first of all, my pleasure to introduce to you our new teacher. We have Christian Ringel with us here tonight. As you know, by the resignations that Mrs. Swanson left, we had a line applicant pool and interviewed on Friday, and we're hardly missing a beat.
Excellent.
And I'm very pleased about that by the amount of applications and the quality of the applicants and the quality of our hire. So we're doing pretty well there. Along the lines of everything, Chris said, a lot of the things, we had the open house, we had 6th grade orientation. I send out a quarterly newsletter to all parents, and after that newsletter comes out, we'll have an opportunity for an in-person or a Zoom meeting, just to reach parents and families, answer questions. Our athletic teams, we're happy to say we've been working, Mr. Capman has been working and meeting and getting everybody squared away on final forms. And we have over 40 volleyball players. We have a soccer team, a couple of football teams, and a couple of kids running cross country. But we're a lot of involvement there, and we're pleased with that. Looking forward to seeing how we can again interact with our folks and keep providing those good environments for our kids. Any questions?
Thank you.
Mr. Henry, yes, sir.
Okay, so started with National Night Out. I think we were asked to do something and we jumped at that. And then Mrs. Rob also came with us. We had a lot of good, Mr. Skipper was at that. We had a lot of fun handing out stuff to people that night. As we know, Event City Days, about the Wheel of Fortune. And the best thing anybody got was a license plate cover. That's at least what I told them. We got to welcome back to school for ninth grade, welcome to the high school. 98 out of 120 families came that night, so that was really good. You guys all know I do my call homes, the reader board. We have 3 FAFSA nights this year. We're gonna have a migrant nights. We're gonna have 2 of those. Hidden in plain sight, if you don't know what that is, it's coming to the high school on September 20th from 6:30 to 8:30. And it's really to help parents to see if their kids have some kind of drug paraphernalia or something like that in their room. They put about 60 items in this mock teenage room. And you have to kind of guess or figure out what is and what isn't. Okay. We're gonna have 2 Gear Up nights. Of course, we'll have a science night that usually goes along with the football, a basketball game in the winter. Well, they'll do some stuff in the commons that people can come up. And then math nights, we're actually looking to have a school play this year. We have a drama person now, and we're gonna try a small group, but we're gonna try to get something together. What's really good is, this year we started out, it's really gone really well as a high school. We're really focusing hard on attendance matters. I don't know where I've heard that from. Maybe somebody's wife would get it off my head because, but the kids are really stepping up. We made a lot of phone calls, talked to the kids about the expectation of coming to school on time every day to be successful and have the chance to graduate on time. But the biggest thing that I started last year, we're going to start it back up this year, is my principal panel with students. So I have 2 kids from every grade that we meet every other week during advisory, and just what questions, concerns. They guided me on some student handbook stuff this last spring that we talked about. Dress code was one of them. I didn't realize how the dress code was so tilted against females until my daughter told me, and we had that conversation. So we've made some changes to that so that it's very equitable in that way. And I know that that's something as an SCAC principal for our league, everybody's kind of looking at. And so I'm going to bring that actually to our meeting that we have next week. But otherwise, there's always a ton of stuff in the high school. The biggest key is trying to make sure that we're making contact with the parents. The parents just aren't walking in, walking through, because there's a lot of stuff that we do that way. So we're going to have to try to be as focused as we can to make sure that we have the meetings and talk with them. And that's why Gear Up is going to have some nights that actually brings in parents, and we'll be there to answer any questions and stuff. Okay. Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move into unfinished business. First up is our facilities presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Thornton. Direct your attention to the large television that has replaced the projector. Mr. Henry's already again made me aware that he wants one of these for every classroom. We'll be working on that. David, are you there?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. So this is a brief facilities report, gathered from all the information that Kelly, Megan, and several other administrators, Chris, Chuck, Clay, Mr. Thornton, we did a complete facilities walkthrough of all the facilities in the building. So David, if you could go to slide 2, please. So the goals of the task force were really to prioritize a list of our district facilities prioritized by overall condition, not a recommendation for improvement, which as anyone who was at any of the meetings will agree, that was tough to do. But it really was simply an accounting of current conditions and come to a consensus on a priority if the school board decides to improve any district facilities in the short term. Next, please. You have in front of you, because quite frankly, the slide I tried to make just made it entirely too small. So the board has in front of them a complete 16-page ICOS report, and ICOS is the Information and Condition of Schools report. This comes from the state. It's a web-based site that we use, as well as every other district in the state, where we report our facilities inventory, and that is not our inventory of computers and pencils and pens and TVs and that such, but the facilities inventory. What are the facilities that we currently are utilizing, and how are they graded? This is straight off of the OSPI website, so I won't read it to you verbatim, but it really is meant to assist in a determination on a 0 to 100 scale of which of our areas, which of our facilities, and then sub areas are most in the need of improvement when compared to facilities around the state. Next, please. So high school, and before I need to preface this, because one of the things that I noticed as state records versus local records, obviously we had a high school before 1979. And it'll get more confusing when we get into the elementary and the middle school. However, at its current site, the original second or third high school, whichever you want to call it, was originally built in 1979. We completed the major remodel and reopened in 2008. Current ICOS score, if you look at just the main building, it's a little bit lower, but if you look at the total on the front of that sheet, you see it scored them 98.92. Very high, and it includes the ag shop, wood shop, and greenhouse, all again, original 1979 construction with the remodel. Basically, but for one small area, Clay, how would you describe that small area that you showed us was part of the original building? It was small.
Yeah. Well,
It's one wall in the commons behind the stage.
right, that's all that's there.
So you've heard me make reference to, as long as you don't knock everything down, you can call it a remodel. This was literally a wall, probably about the size of that. Right there. It's still standing from the original building, which is why we called it a remodel. Next, please. Middle school. Originally built in 1930. And again, what you will see as we go over the middle school and the elementary, the state actually considers this to be one building. They do not differentiate between the middle school and the elementary from the state level. So in the ICOS report, you will see it referred to as a K-8 building. And I have some descriptions that we'll talk about a little bit later when we're talking about the prioritization and the ranking. Originally built in 1930, modernization and a small addition in 1994. ICOS score for both the elementary and the middle school are at 46.92. So significantly less than the high school. Next, please. And the elementary, again, originally built in 1930, most recent addition in 1994. However, I was able, with Rosario's help today, there was a rededication of Kybe Elementary, or excuse me, Kybe Grade School in 1950. One of the difficulties, as I was looking for dates and times and things like that, I talked to a couple people at OSPI. OSPI's records do not differentiate when that became one building and what grade level configuration extended to. They see everything as a 1930 to present for that particular building. However, when you look at the report, you will see that it refers to the K-8 as a single story, whereas we know that the middle school has that additional second floor, which was part of that 1994 renovation. Next, please. So district facilities, we toured the district office, we toured maintenance and transportation. One we talked about the infrastructure and storage capacity being a common theme around these buildings. And I think a lot of that, again, that was one of the multiple times where we kind of had to take a step back and say, okay, we're not looking for improvements yet. We just want to judge what we have. It really was, though, there were several times, in fact, when we were at the maintenance transportation facility that I think it was Kelly even, where do you guys put stuff? Where's the storage at? And then our final tour was at the district office. We went from the maintenance and operations down to the district office. And it's currently sufficient for what we're doing. And I felt I needed to make a point. We have an exceptional lease agreement right now with Prosser Memorial. So I think it's important from the get-go that anytime we're talking about any potential facilities considerations, the district office is not among them. We're completely satisfied with the current state. We always, we can talk about bells and whistles and wants versus needs, but when we're really talking about a need, it doesn't exist there. Next, please. So the important part is when we were talking about prioritization, and we did this through a consensus building, simply because, as you all know, during the summer, sometimes we had people taking vacations, sometimes we had people out of town. So it wasn't as simple as simply being able to get everybody to vote, because otherwise we would have had people not voting for different things or voting for things they didn't see, or vice versa. But it was a fairly good consensus that the elementary is far and away the #1 issue that we currently have here in the district. Middle school is a close second, and part of the reason, obviously, when you look at the ICOS scoring, you see it's all considered one building anyway. But so much of the infrastructure, however, is housed at the elementary and is shared by the middle school. Depending on where the board chooses to go, I think even by fixing some of the problems at the elementary would by simple, I think it would take off and it would help with some of the things that are currently wrong with middle school too. So that's why I think elementary got pushed very quickly to the top, especially when we went downstairs. There's some iron down there that has probably been down there since 1930. Nobody's gotten it out of there. So as I said, then we go down to the kind of the next phase, which was really, it kind of surprised me, but I was very glad that folks in the group were not just thinking about the way things are today, but we're really thinking down the road too of, the transportation and maintenance area is very sufficient for where we are at today, September 12th, 2022. As you'll see in the next slide, there are things that are potentially happening where we may need to address that sooner, probably with some other facility upgrade. Because again, going back to what Kelly said, there really isn't much in the way of storage. Any expansion of our bus fleet is going to require some more space. We are very fortunate. We own the property that's currently not utilized to the tune of about 13 acres right behind it. So there's definitely room for expansion / discussion of facilities needs that could also incorporate that 13 acres. And as I said before, the district office, we just didn't feel that was a need at this time. If there was a way for me to put that lower than 5, but we only had 5 spots. So I think we're sufficient there. Next, please. So moving forward, where do we go from here? We've got a recommendation from our committee. Excuse me. First things first, as the board is very aware, and as we will publish later this week, we're having a work session on Friday, the 16th at 12 o'clock here in the boardroom. This will be a financial review, and this will be presented by Corey Plager from D.A. Davidson. What he will be doing is giving the school board a direct look at historical data around our levies, our bonds, what our debt capacity is. The fact of the matter remains, next year, I believe in August, we're going to be proud owners of the high school free and clear. So there are a lot of implications, both in short-term and long-term planning based on the information he's going to be providing. So I'm really looking forward to that. As many of you are aware, I started working with the city of Benton City simply as a constituent, as simply as a member of the community, when they started talking about expansion of the city itself. And we've had kind of passing conversations around the idea that there's a large chunk of property of about 258 acres going down Weber Canyon, and that you see from the highway that's going to come up for sale in a matter of, let's say, within 2 to 3 years at the latest. So we're going to work with Benton City to coordinate their short and long-term development plans with the city and make sure that the next item on the list, our 10-year plan for facilities and financial commitments, meshes with what they're doing. We do not want to be seen as in competition with the city. We want to be looking at working with the city towards common goals. If, for instance, during that meeting, they were projecting up to 1,000 new homes on the Keona side of the highway. If that were to happen, I could show you 4 different 10-year plans, and none of them would be suitable for that. So we're going to have 2 very diverse plans moving forward. One that includes a steady rate of expansion over there over the next 5 years to 10 years, and then one that kind of keeps status quo. As I told members of the committee, when you see the first for sale sign out there with those plots of land, and currently there are going to be 7 offered for sale out of those 258 acres. From the time you see that first sign go up to someone actually opening a door on a new house, you can figure probably 2 years. So once we see that sign, Clay has promised he's going to drive by there every day on the way to work and check for signs and then call me if he sees one. But that really is about as good a commitment as I can get from when these things are potentially going to go to sale. I see it honestly within 2 years is my prediction. So with that, I think that's the last one. Is that correct, David? Yeah, that's the last one. I would love to entertain any questions. Obviously, this was not a detail-oriented plan. You have a huge amount of details in the ICOS reviews of the facilities themselves. But I think to a person, and I've got to thank all of the individuals who were a part of this group, coming in, giving up time during the summer and fall to be able to make these meetings, because it really is, that's the ground floor of, we don't care what you do when you do it, but these are what we think should be addressed first. And of course, that will entail a lot more conversation between myself and the board and our community once that time comes. But I'll leave it at that. And then if you have any questions, or if there are specific areas that you would like more detail in, I can certainly get those for you. But I think very soon we're probably going to be coming back to the board with questions about timelines. And I think a lot of that is going to hinge on our presentation on Friday from Mr. Flegger. So with that, I'll leave it to you. And any questions for myself or many of the people here that were on those committees. We're on the committee, and would be happy to.
Did committee members want to make any comments?
Well, first, I'd like to thank Pete for inviting me for it. As you know, I'm a parent ambassador for Watson from alumni. And I've been active with my kids' education for a while now, when they were at Head Start. And this is just a continuation of it. I agree with him. This is a bill that we need to look into. And as you said, we need to look into that. The very first thing is that elementary school. It's past its time. And it ain't gonna be efficient here in 4 years.
Or even less efficient than it already is.
I've been going through these things as well. I already see some issues that I would like to see fixed. Obviously, it is a time thing. And I'm very happy that we're finally going to look into getting some things fixed. I also would like to know about this meeting on Friday. Is it open to the public or is it only the board members?
It's a public meeting.
Here at noon. And my comment was there's a room in just past the gym, that's the major electrical supply for the school. And if you go in there, it's almost like visiting an antique store because some of the stuff is very old. And, you know, it's one overload away from being $100,000 bill. You know, electrical supplies, once you have to start rewiring, then I can see, you know, well, we already had an issue at one time and they patched it together, made it work, but we would, you know, immediately be in debt again or digging in our reserves to try to fix it. There are some issues that are brewing that, you know, could be a very dangerous or, you know, shut us down. Okay, well,
A quick question, I guess.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this didn't include potential improvements. Is there a plan for a future phase to put together suggestions for where we may be able to make improvements to better serve our students?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think the real discussion is going to come from continuing our discussions as a board and district administrative staff in our community to see, quite frankly, whether we're in a position financially to be able to do something. I know that we can do something. Much of what Corey is going to talk to us about on Friday is going to be to really dive down and give us some numbers as far as what can we expect to be able to garner through community support. Then, quite frankly, working the numbers out with an advisor to be able to say, is this a sufficient amount of funding to get us what we want? I think the board is aware I'm not a fan of, you always use Kennewick High as the model because they approved a certain amount of money for a certain amount of reconstruction. And you could literally walk down the hall and see when they pretty much ran out of money because the quality of the construction from that point on suffered immensely. And so we just need, I think, to have a plan that will meet our needs and be within the means we have at our disposal through our community. And then, quite frankly, it's going to be a matter of gauging what the community's appetite is for facilities improvement in general, knowing that one community-based task force has made the recommendation that the elementary should be the first thing we look at. I got to give, again, Kelly and Megan a lot of credit, though, from the and Siri. I got to give them a lot of credit for they're already thinking down the roads that you are, Josh. They're thinking about what are the different ways we can appeal to people to make sure that they get through the facility, see it themselves. And for those folks that can't, putting it on websites, putting it on poster boards, making it available in places in our community where folks really can go and see. Megan took some great pictures while she was on our tour and be able to see, okay, this is really what we're talking about. So really the next phase is to look at the financials. And then at that point, the board, I know we're going to be talking probably at our next meeting about levy authorization for the beginning in January 24. It seems like we just got through with a levy cycle, but it was a 2-year cycle that will be off the books in December of 23. So we need to start prepping for what does after December of 23 look like from a levy and operations standpoint. What is our bond capacity? If we were to consider making a major upgrade at one of our facilities, and then at that point, really get information, a lot of information out to our community to say, this is what we're thinking, this is where we're aiming now, but re-aim us if we need to be re-aimed. Because you know as well as I do that unless we engage the community early and often on this type of project, it's not going to go anywhere. We can't get the cart before the horse in this particular. So it's a very long answer to what was such a simple question, but yeah, there are plans and it really is dependent on one building upon the previous ideas that have happened.
Any other questions? We're in our board meeting. So at the end of the meeting, we can visit.
I
Okay.
just wanted to emphasize that, we do need to look at state matching funds and any other
Right.
grants or that would be available to help our community.
Yep.
Bring our schools. So we're not asking them for everything and getting as much support as we can.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll move on to policy 4110, Citizen Advisory Committee. And that's our second reading.
Yeah, we're for consideration again on policy 4410, citizen advisory committees and task force. Second reading, again, this is it's not a required policy, but it's just one that I think with our level of community engagement that we're starting to see that we need to have some pretty prescriptive policy in the way of how we go about setting up committees, sending reports back to the board, things of that nature. I know this is the second reading, so I'd love to entertain any questions or anything that you'd have. I gotta admit, there's a couple, the policies that we're looking at tonight were pretty straightforward. There shouldn't be much there.
Questions? None? We'll move on to 4120 then, similar.
Very similar, and as the board, I hope the board remembers, even though it was during my COVID meeting, so I barely remember. Policy 4120 is really focusing on our school-based organizations, our booster clubs, our PTOs, things of that nature. And the importance about this is simply that as we are now getting more and more people who are interested in rekindling some of those organizations, that we empower our principals and communicate that with our community so that our community knows who to go to. I think one of the examples I gave the board previously was the idea that I know there was at least one point in our history where we had competing booster clubs and things of that nature. We want to avoid that. So giving our principals on an annual basis the ability to meet with and designate their, yep, this is the booster club and this is who's in charge. This is our PTO. And really, that is also meant to help Mr. Rob with district finances, because that, of course, will help us to differentiate what is ASB related, what's not ASB related, fundraiser concerns, anything like that. It will be delineated very well.
Any comments on that one? Okay, and then finally, policy 5515.
Yep, policy 5515, again, the workforce secondary traumatic stress. It's the very convoluted title to what I have described to the board as being a legislative action that took place in 2021, requires school districts to convene a committee that regularly looks at staff wellness. We have a lot of social emotional things going on with our students, and this is meant to reinforce what the district is doing for its staff members. So as the board is aware, I've asked the principals that when we have a safety meeting on a monthly basis, that is now a health and safety meeting and keeps a running agenda item of all the usual agenda items, but one that's repetitive and always comes up around staff wellness, any concerns, any updates, things like that. Julie was very aware of the fact that Chris does a really good job of making her staff aware in her newsletters to staff about things that are going on, specifically for teacher and staff support. So this will simply embed that at each building and the district and require us to keep doing that moving forward. I think I think it's a good program and it's not a cost to the district.
And we have an existing committee that's kind of adopt this.
Yeah, because we're a small district and quite frankly, we've got a number of folks who, quite frankly, they serve on just about every committee we have. And so this was simply a way by building it into that pre-existing safety committee and retitling it health and safety, that we can meet the requirements of the law as well as doing all of our safety work and quite frankly, saving some of those folks from a third or fourth meeting. But easily put into the agendas of those meetings and appropriate.
So I do have a small amendment I'd like us to consider for this policy, and that is the first sentence after policy statement. If I get to read, the district will promote a positive workplace climate that supports each individual staff member. And that would be striking the phrase that says that includes a focus on diversity and inclusion. I think, especially with mental health, we need to be focused on our individual staff needs. And I'd rather emphasize.
That was in the second paragraph.
It's the first sentence under policy statement.
Oh. We could do without that whole sentence.
Yeah, that would be another option that I would be supporting as well. So I just.
Well, prior to our next reading and formal adoption, I can give you some options with regards to that sentence, and you can choose A, B, or none of the above, and we can rewrite it on the spot if we need to. Thank you, Julie.
Yep, good comment. Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll move into new business. First will be adopt the minutes from 8/22. Rick wasn't here, so. Was there any comments, changes?
I'll move to approve the minutes from 8/22.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passes unanimous. Next, new housing development, busing and crossing guard discussion. Mr. Peterson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Thorne. It's come to our attention, and when I say come to our attention, it means I got a visit from a parent who's new to the community. And it, quite frankly, was a great conversation and really brought up, I think, some forward-thinking potential changes that we need to consider. So this person bought in one of our new developments, and quite frankly, just happened to land right inside our boundary for the 1 mile mark as far as walking to school. And this student is a kindergarten student, 5 years old. And the question came up, what do we do for transportation? And this parent went through all of the right resources, reached out to Martha, reached out to Dan. And realistically, I think one of the things that was said, and it wasn't meant in any negative fashion, is just, well, these have been our boundaries past 10 years, if not longer. And quite frankly, she asked a great question, which was, so what are we going to do now? The real concern is, as we get new families moving into the area that are right on that border, one of the biggest things that I think we're going to have to overcome is the fact that our traffic is going to increase. We've been very fortunate to live in a community where, unless you're coming in around 8 o'clock or leaving around 4 and getting the shift workers coming through town, we don't have a lot of traffic. However, this parent, as well as some others that she mentioned, are just concerned about having to have their kids walk to school, crossing a couple of what are becoming busier streets. And of course, if you look at some of the new developments, if you think, you're at the end of the development and then you look down the street, there's 10 for sale signs at vacant lots, you have a pretty good idea of what's coming. So one of the things that I'd like to explore, because quite frankly, we don't have the buses, we don't have the bus drivers do anything at this point. What I'd like to do is reach out to our community and see if we can get some parents who would like to organize what we refer to, or what I refer to as parent trains, meaning gathering up all the kids in the neighborhood, having a rotation with a parent, then walking the kids to school as a group. I also think that it will be time for us to consider formal crossing guards in a couple areas where traffic is just getting to the point where at certain times of day, I was a high school principal, but little guys, you can barely see them over the hood of some of their cars. So I think that this board has been very positive in keeping student safety at the forefront of what we do. And I would just like to suggest that that you allow me to go ahead and reach out to community, reach out to parents, see what kind of a reaction we get, because short of that, I think we will have to go down the road of looking for some very part-time people, either through extension of current hours or otherwise, to be able to serve as true crossing guards, probably from about 7:15 till or 7 to 8, 7:15 to 8:15, sometime along there. And again, then at the release of school to make sure that our kids are getting there safely. But I don't think this is an issue that's going to go away. I think this is one that we're going to start attacking now, and I think it'll probably be with us long term. So as much a discussion as, and I'd love to hear any reactions to that, but I think we really need to make a little bit of a push on this one.
I agree. If our kids are crossing busy streets, we need to have some adult supervision if we can't provide the transportation.
And I know I've more than once reached out to the sheriff's office. And, they have a patrol car that can, when he can, he sits there because there's a lot of cars that run right through that stop flag. And, they'll go around, they'll facetiously, go right by the crossing guard. So,
Yep.
I don't know if we need to reach out to the state maybe and put in some of those flashing crossing lights. That are push button, solar powered, something like that, because it would be on the state's purvey, being a state highway. So maybe we can start there, but
I was just thinking, a high school student as well, for community service hours might be a good idea to recruit. They live in that neighborhood. Great volunteer hours.
Absolutely. I am going to bring it up at our next, as you know, I'm a member of the Faith Council here in Benton City. So I meet with all the leaders of the different religious community groups that are here, seeing if they'd have any interest in supporting us in that manner as well. I think they, quite frankly, I think they would.
So I guess I have a really stupid question. If this kid is just inside our 1 mile, why can we not cluster our pickups and have him walk a block, 2 blocks the other direction, and we pick up that whole community at 2 or 3 different stops that are, I don't know. I mean,
No.
I have to go somewhere and get my mail out of a cluster mailbox, right? Because they're not delivered to every house. Can't we do the same with the kid?
I think we can. Our next step is to really get down and dirty with the location and the bus routes.
Right.
The bottom line is, Dan says, we're fairly close to capacity. And that's, of course, as with any busing system, that's if everybody rides on every given day. We know they don't.
Right.
It never fails when you set up something like that. All of a sudden, everybody comes to school that day. It's a good problem to have, but at the same time, what you don't want is getting a bunch of kids at bus stop and then overfilling our buses either. So yes, I think short-term safety fix and then long-term look at our busing.
and I think it was less than 10 years ago, but the state came down on us for hauling all the kids in and said, you will not be paid for transporting these kids if they're within a mile of school.
Correct.
And so it wasn't that we gave up on them, it was that the state forced us.
Yep. Local control.
Decisions should be based on more than just distance and the traffic
Yep.
patterns. And safety should be
Yeah,
higher
very much
priority.
so. And very similar to conversations, you know, when we were talking about even in our facilities group about potential sale of that property. And, you know, we've been very, very fortunate. We have not had to cross anybody or have anybody on foot crossing there. So this is just the first shot across the bow. So short and long-term plans.
Any other comment? Okay, we'll move on to public comment protocol. Another discussion by Mr. Peterson.
And it should be fairly brief, as I explained to the board at the last meeting. All I would like to do is I'd like to propose that we institute a procedure. Currently, any of these fine folks who come in, sign in over at our guest sign in, give us an email, give us an address if they choose to. However, for any email-based or written communication that would come forward for board comment, we do not have that same practice in place. Meaning that we could treat anonymous folks who we don't know from Adam, but want to make a comment to the board. Currently, we kind of lump those in. And I would really think that we have to hold all people to the same standard if we expect the folks that come in to be signing in, giving us a name, identifying themselves before a comment. I don't think it's too much to ask of a person who can't come in, but wants to send in an email. Simply say, please include your name and address, phone number or email. Well, we'll have their email, but phone number if you'd like contact back or like some questions answered. I think it's fair. That's the big thing.
And it was to have a policy and procedure in place, or?
They don't.
Okay.
There really isn't, quite frankly, until COVID. You didn't get the opportunity for electronic submissions. We do that and did that kind of on the run so that we would give people an outlet, especially when we were on Zoom. Well, that's been removed, but the convenience of being on Zoom or being recorded and watching a recording is still there. We have a lot of people who watch these meetings from their home, which is a great thing. Our participation, I think, is significantly higher than it was. But if folks feel the need to ask a question of the board to have it answered, I think that we need to have the same requirements in place as anyone we have come in person.
Seems reasonable.
Yep.
And this isn't a policy question, so it's not something that we need to take a vote on. It's simple. Quite frankly, it's as simple as getting our communications director to change the procedures on the website.
So do we want to make a policy or just kind of clarify it?
I think we
Part of
simply
our,
clarify the instructions. I think we'll be fine.
either question, comment? Okay, then we'll move on to what we call it.
All this curriculum
Curriculum
safeguards.
Safeguard discussion. That's mine because I brought it up now. So I have a friend that's on the Kennewick School Board and I know not too long ago, I brought up a subject of a resolution about the critical race theory or any of that kind of alternate instruction. And they attacked it head on. Instead, they made a policy. And they did a really good job writing it. I hope you guys all got a copy of it and looked at it. And I looked at it and I see that they, in their minutes, if you go back, they had 2 or 3 drafts and they made some changes, but I took that and a couple of my coworkers, they're technical writers and engineers, we all read it lunchtime, of course, and they said it's well written, you know, it was well written and it was to the point without belaboring anything, without pointing any fingers, and without even bringing the, you know, the word critical race theory or alternate historical facts or any of that. And so, and I contacted them, and it turns out Dr. Reed, the one who authored it, and she did a really good job, and you know, so anyway, I'm putting it out there and saying, I would like us to adopt the same policy. They gave us permission to use it word for word. Actually, they promoted it and said, please do. So anyway, I'm bringing it up for discussion. What do you guys think?
Well, my first thoughts were, I agree with the text of it, and where my mind went to was something that Rick had brought up previously is, how are new materials brought into our school, like into the library? How do we decide what's our procedure for purchasing new books? What is our procedure for supplementing our core curriculum? And so I like the text of it. I would kind of like the opportunity to, for us to discuss it a little bit further, maybe put in some more safeguards for the curriculum to ensure that our teachers are providing a balanced perspective on controversial topics, and that the materials that they're supplementing their curriculum with are also balanced so that they don't influence a certain ideology or belief or opinion to our kids, and the kids are able to look at different sides of issues and use critical thinking and develop those skills. And so I think it would be good for the board to maybe have a work session on it, go through it, maybe look at our current policies that we have as far as, so I know we have 2020, which is in our curriculum and instruction. It talks about having that balanced approach, and maybe writing our own or modifying it a little bit. So I'd really like to see some safeguards put in on, we approve all our core curriculum, but the board doesn't approve any supplemental materials. And so I want to understand what our procedures are on that and if we should modify those. That's where I was thinking. But I agreed with the text of the policy that you sent. So.
I liked it too. The one thing I would have changed is the title. Instead of race and curriculum, I would have put race and education or something to that effect. So it encompasses a little more than just the curriculum, but anyway. I didn't know if you guys want to make comments or.
No, I feel like
change it. Right, I think that's our best bet. So I wanted to bring up the discussion and see how everybody agrees.
I had also received it from a parent or a community member.
And it's readily available on Kennewick School Board website. What was it, 2440, 20? I can tell you.
340.
What's that?
2340.
2340. So anybody could go look it up and read it. Okay, well,
Is there a, and I would invite anyone to respond, with Dale, of course, as president. Is there a time frame you'd like to have a work session? We've got a work session coming this Friday on the 16th. We follow that up fairly quickly with another public board meeting on the 26th. Thinking maybe how about I send you some options for possibly the week after September 26th? Because I know with a few of you have to in order to get a meeting during the day, you need to do some schedule checking. So let Heidi and I work on a couple of calendar options. I know Friday's usually the best day from a work schedule standpoint for a couple of you. Give you some options, and then you can respond, and then we can start scheduling date, time, and content, all of the different things that we want to review for that meeting.
One other thought was when I think we're all attending the WASDA conference and
Correct.
perhaps having a work session at that conference could work as well.
Yep.
So yeah, thoughts on that.
Heck, we're already planning things into the end of September, 1st of October, so we're closer than we are. I'd like to think.
You know, it'll be frosty.
I'd be okay with that.
Okay, well, we'll move into board comments. We- Comment. I can just tell you, I had one complaint this afternoon. And then, it was I guess some kids were on a bus, slot 2 is what they said. And somebody, has asthma, and the little brother asked the driver, can we close the window? And the driver just said no. No explanation, no comment, and it was like a first grader. And he was not about to challenge authority, but anyway, that was somebody's complaint that the windows were open and the smoky air and the kid had asthma. So anyway, they were upset, and they'll probably call it.
Well, I'm sure they will, and to be honest, you saying that. Reinforces the thought that I had earlier today as we were having an air quality discussion. And one of the things that, when I was in communication with Mr. Smith and Mr. Campman and the principals about air quality, moving everybody indoors, in the side of my head was, wait a minute, we tell all the buses to run with their window, or at least 2 windows down. That's recommended from Department of Health. And so we've got competing interests. I think I know where I fall on that particular issue. I'd want the smoke not in the bus and take your chances with the COVID, but that's me. That is not a representation of Pound Benton City School District anyway. Probably shouldn't have even said that out loud, but the problem you see, the smoke, is probably bigger than the problem that you're trying to avoid. So I appreciate that very much. We'll get that taken care of.
Something Mr. Adamson can discuss with this driver. So I think it was a substitute driver, and perhaps they were more preoccupied with driving than worried about what the question was. That's kind of what the gist of it.
I get it. If you happen to have depending on whether, I will shoot you an email if I don't hear from that parent to say, okay, if you'd like to refer them to me, I can clarify some issues.
It was slot 2.
There you
That
go.
was the only thing. Okay, any other comments? Okay, well, that'll end our board meeting. We'll have an executive session with no business to follow. And I appreciate you guys showing up and participating.
I think we're gonna open up.
Yeah. Well, we'll be adjourning after we follow.
Oh, where do executive session? Okay. You say 60 minutes or 30?
Oh, did I say? No, I